What's up guys, so I create custom tracks now. Yeah, I know, huge shocker, it's totally not been like this for like half a year now. Anyway, I had wanted to create my own custom tracks for a very long time now, and in July of last year I finally got around to learn how to do it. Since then I've managed to create 14 different custom tracks, or 17 if you count every version of each track. And while I'm still definitely not a very good custom track creator, there are quite a few tracks that I'm quite proud of. And a few tracks that are absolute dog shit. So in this video I'm going to rank every track that I've made in 2023 from worst to best. Now the way this works is going to be very similar to my other rankings, meaning that my opinions here are going to be mostly based off the gameplay. Now since I'm actually the creator of all of these tracks this time around, I'm also going to be talking about what I went for when creating the tracks, and possible update ideas that I might actually execute at some point in the future. Lastly, I should mention as a little disclaimer, this video is going to be a bit biased. I am trying to stay as objective as possible, however I am aware of the fact that my opinion is probably going to be quite a bit different than yours. And if that's the case, then feel free to share your opinions in the comments down below. But now with everything being said, let's start off the ranking. 17. Desktop Dash Technical Loop Edition Alpha. This track was made together with Luigi's Story for the 3rd edition of his remake competition. The track to be remade for this competition was Technical Loop, and I submitted 5 tracks in total for this competition. This is actually the only track here where I didn't work a lot on the model. Luigi pretty much gave me his model on the last day of the competition and asked me to finish it. Now why I agreed to this, I don't know, since I knew this wouldn't end up working, and I was absolutely right. I pretty much only had one try here and also had to rush extremely hard, so a mistake was just bound to happen. Now I'm not gonna go too hard on the texturing, obviously it's not very good, but I'd say for how hard I rushed it, it turned out pretty well. The issue with this track is actually the collision, since as you might have seen already, I'm driving below the track here. Yeah, at some point while doing the collision I decided to move the track down to get closer to the universal fall boundary. However, I only did so with the collision and not with the model. Because of that, the collision of the track is way below the actual track, and I think it's pretty obvious why this is a major problem. Now keep in mind, an actual functioning version of this track has been released, but it was released in January of 2024, and thus it's not included in this ranking. Now Luigi and I do plan to give this track a complete overhaul, but it's not really my main priority right now. But as for the alpha version of the track, since you can't really see where to go, this is a very obvious last place. 16. Toilet Hack Fan's Biggest Nightmare Beta. This track was made for the Nightmare CT Jam and ended up placing last. Now that's not really the biggest shocker, since this is one of the many joke tracks that I've made over the past year. I've made so many joke tracks, and yet the last place wasn't one of them. Anyway, obviously this track wasn't really created with good gameplay in mind. First off, the track is so long that it makes Mushroom Peaks look like Baby Park. Additionally, the track also has super long straightaways and ramps that shoot you to Mars. But if you ever feel like scaring the fuck out of Toilet Hack Fan, then this is the track for you. Now I don't really plan to update any of my joke tracks, since, you know, they're joke tracks. The only thing that I might do for some of these tracks is fixing up the gameplay a little bit in case I ever put them in any CT pack. Now there's still quite a few joke tracks to come, so let's just continue. 15. Technically a Loop Beta. This is the 3rd and hopefully final track of the Funny Circle track trilogy. It's a sequel to Paper Todet's Lucky Roop and Toilet Hack Fan's Beefy Leech Desert Bus. Like the other ones, it was made for Luigi Story's remake competition, in this case the Technical Loop edition once again, and like the other Funny Circle tracks, it also got last. Yeah, somehow Desktop Dash Technical Loop edition actually managed to get second to last. But it's not like this track is very good either. I mean, it's literally just a circle. It's definitely the most playable track of the Circle track trilogy, but come on. So anyway, there's not really much more to this track, but I did make the item routes go backwards, so if you use a bullet bill, be ready to be set back a few laps. Now the only reason why this plays above Toilet Hack Fan's Biggest Nightmare is because this track doesn't give me Desert Bus flashbacks. The tracks from here on are definitely playable, but still quite bad. 14. MKWii Among Us and Internet Experience Beta. We have arrived at another co-op track, this time being made together with Toilet Hack Fan. This track was also made for Luigi's Story remake competition, and unlike the last one, it's actually a remake of Technical Loop. I still feel like such a genius for figuring out that adding 2 split pathways makes this track look like an Among Us. The track ended up getting 11th, or in other words, 3rd to last. Yeah, I made the entire bottom 3. I really need to get a life. So anyway, the theme here is pretty accurate, since all I see in Among Us and playing with randoms is lag and lots of bad words. If you drive the track normally, it's not too bad. I mean, the cannon is a little bit unorthodox, but it's nothing too crazy, right? If you don't like the cannon, you can just skip the entire track by jumping off after the first turn. Also, this respawn right here works very well. THF did an amazing job with the KMP. So anyway, this isn't that bad, but it's definitely not better than any of the non-joke tracks. Except you. But it is actually now time to take a quick break from the joke tracks. 13. Wildbanianism Beta. Here we have my first ever released custom track. It wasn't the first one that I worked on, but it was the first one that I published on the wiki. It was made for the Art CT Jam, where it placed 14th. Now, I'll say this right away, I had no idea idea what to do with this. Art was probably the worst possible City Jam theme for me, since I had absolutely no idea what to make. However, I still ended up making a track since I wanted to see how it's like to participate in the City Jam, and this is the end result. Now, to be clear, I don't think this track is that bad, but it's been updated twice since its release, and there's not really much of a reason to play the oldest version anymore. I'll talk about the updates once I get to the newer versions. Now, to the actual track, obviously it doesn't look very good visually, but I'd say the gameplay is pretty alright overall. The track is pretty fast-paced and even has a few cool strats. Really, the only reason why it places so low is because there's not really a reason to play it since, you know, the newer versions exist. Speaking of newer versions, 12 Warbanianism beta.fix. As the version name implies, this is simply a bug fix update, and what it does is fixing an endless respawn point at the mushroom section. However, aside that, most of the track's main problems remain, so the newest version of this track is definitely gonna place quite a bit higher. 11 Mario Party 8 Circuit Beta. This is our final City Jam track being created for the Mario Party City Jam, where it placed 13, which means that technically speaking, Toilet Hack fans' biggest nightmare is my best City Jam result. When it comes to the track's theme, this is definitely one of my favorites. I really like the idea of combining all 6 boards of Mario Party 8 into one racetrack. However, since I ended up spending about 3 hours on texturing the spaces alone, I did end up having to rush this track a lot. Some sections of the track look fine, but for others it's definitely apparent that I didn't have much time for them. I mean, for Shy Guy's Perplex Express, I literally just wrote train on the wall and called it a day, and for the Bowser stage, I literally asked AI to do the space texture since I didn't have the time to search for one. Now, when it comes to the gameplay, I actually think this track is totally fine. However, just like Warbanianism, this track has also received an update later along, so we'll see that one later on the list. 10 PP Beach version 1.0. Yup, we're back to the joke tracks, and this is another one created together with Tourette Hackfan. It's one of 3 tracks that I made for the 2nd edition of Luigi Story's remake competition, and this one ended up placing 2nd to last. The track to be remade in this competition was Leafy Beach, and this track is technically a Leafy Beach remake if you squint very hard. I mean, what else should it be? I don't see any other shape with this track. Anyway, this is one of 3 joke tracks that I consider as decently playable. In fact, I actually really enjoy the drop to the bottom section of the track. Just be sure to not tail dive the whole way, unless you like to have Mario Kart Wii physics moments. Also, there's this cool ending strat that I believe only works on lap 3. I actually have a decent amount of fun when playing this track, so that's why it places above some of the non-joke tracks. The same goes for 9 Hello, Your Computer Has Virus Beta. This is once again a co-op track, this time made together with Epic Crossover. It was made for the 3rd edition of Luigi Story's remake competition and placed 9th. Out of all my joke tracks, I'd say this one's the one that feels the most like an actual race track. It has a pretty normal track design, and really the only issue that it has is that the cannon can kill you sometimes. You could actually make a point for placing this a bit higher, but I just don't find this track to be that interesting to play. Also, ever since I've made this track, I can't get the Hello, Your Computer Has Virus meme out of my head. Please help me. 8 Beefy Beach Beta. For our final joke track, we have another one that was created for the 2nd edition of Luigi Story's remake competition. It ended up placing 1 spot above PP Beach. Out of all the joke tracks that I've made, this one's definitely the most enjoyable in my opinion. I've spent a stupid amount of time trying this track because it's just that damn fun. I don't know why, I guess I just like bouncing around like an idiot. But now that we finally made it out of all the joke tracks, we can now get to some actual quality. 7 Yoshi's Island Raceway Beta. This track was made for the 1st edition of Kozakura's remake challenge. The track is a remake of Yoshi's Lagoon, and while Kozakura's remake challenges don't have results, if they did, I'm pretty sure this track would have gotten last. Now visually, I don't think this is terrible, I think this track looks fine, but I find the gameplay pretty underwhelming to say the least. Originally, I had planned to add most strats from Sachi's version of Yoshi Lagoon, but I wasn't able to do it since I ran low on time. So in the end, we have a very empty remake of Yoshi Lagoon. Now I do plan to give this track a major update at some point in the future, and hopefully I'll be able to add all the strats from Sachi's version there. But in its current state, this track isn't bad by any means, but it's definitely one of the weaker non-joke tracks here. 6 Warbanianism Beta 2. Yeah, it's time to talk about this track for the 3rd time now. Thankfully, it's also the last time since it is the newest version of the track. So what did I do for this one? Well, first off, remember that I fixed an endless respawn in the beta.fix version? Well, turns out there was actually another endless respawn at the half-pipe section that I somehow never noticed. Also, I added Goombas just so I wouldn't have to name this beta.fix.fix. Oh, and I also changed a few respawns, making this track a lot more enjoyable. It's still definitely far from my best track, but I do plan to give it a major overhaul at some point. 5 Mario Party 8 Circuit beta.fix. It's time for our final beta track, and pretty much all this update did was fixing the cannons, since in the original version they just didn't work. I'm still not actually sure why the cannons didn't work in the original version, but they work in this version, so I guess it's fine. The rest of the track is the exact same, and I think that's fine. For a beta track, this works quite well, and it's definitely the best one by far. But I do plan to give this track a major overhaul in the future, since I do think that the theme has a lot of potential. But now we get into the real shit, the actual finished tracks. This top 4 was really hard to decide, since I really like all of these tracks. I might honestly change my opinion on this later, but for now in 4th place we have Icewing Circuit version 1.0. This is the first track that I ever worked on. Originally, this was supposed to be a joke track based on Sherbet Circle, thus the name, but in the end I figured that city creation wasn't so hard after all, and I made this. years. I think that out of the tracks that I made in 2023, this is arguably the best one visually, which is not that surprising since it's also the track that I spent the most time on by far. Maybe the cave section could have had a bit more detail, but otherwise I think this track looks pretty cool, no pun intended. I also really enjoy the gameplay here, although the track is quite fun and there are some cool shortcuts. However, gameplay wise, I do think that this is the least interesting of my 4 fully finished tracks. Nevertheless, I'm actually surprised by how well this track turned out for being my first track. Regarding the track's future, there are a few gameplay issues here, so I'm definitely gonna fix those at some point. But I don't really plan a major overhaul for any of the 1.0 tracks, at least for now. 3. Monty Mole Valley version 1.0. This is actually my second track that I ever worked on, and I made it for the first edition of Luigi Story's remake competition, where it placed second. Now, visually speaking, I don't think this track is that good compared to the other version 1.0 tracks. Like, I don't think it looks bad, but I feel like it lacks some detail. However, I am really happy with how the gameplay turned out here. First off, the track is a remake of Rocky Loop, which I think has a really good design, but I also really like the new ideas that I implemented here. The track is quite fast-paced, there are some really cool shortcuts, and I even made some Monty molds that appear on lap 2. For all the 1.0 tracks though, this is definitely the one that needs the most change in my opinion. I definitely want to add some more visual details to this track at some point. Nonetheless though, I really like how this track's gameplay turned out, which is why it places in the top 3. 2. Luigi's Small Stadium version 1.0. As of right now, this is my newest fully finished track being created for the 3rd edition of Luigi Story's remake competition. I made it together with Luigi Story, and just like Monty Mole Valley, it ended up placing second. Out of all the tracks that I made, this one definitely has the most risky approach. I personally really love tracks with unique gameplay, so I tried to make one myself, and honestly I think it worked out quite well. The track is fast-paced as fuck, there is some very cool strats, and I really like the cannon entrance. This is easily the most fun track that I've made so far in my opinion, so why does this only place second? Well, as we expect with a track that heavily relies on half-pipes, there's quite a bit of jank here. Also, items don't really feel that useful here since this track has a lot of boost panels. Nonetheless though, I absolutely love playing this track, and I definitely want to make more experimental tracks in the future. But in my opinion, the best track that I've made in 2023 is Gold Leaf Shoreline version 1.0. I don't think this should be way much of a surprise since this did place first in the 2nd edition of Luigi Story's remake competition. I made this track together with Atmosphere, and he's a godlike CT creator. This track definitely couldn't have been this strong as a solo track. First off, I really like the visuals here, not as much as on Ice Ring Circuit, but still they're really good. But this track definitely shines the most with the gameplay. It's generally just the most functional of my tracks, and I also really like the strats. So for just being a consistently great track in my opinion, Gold Leaf Shoreline takes the crown for the best track that I've made in 2023. So that's it for this ranking. Are you mad that I didn't include the Great Apple War despite moving an enemy route by 1mm? Let me know in the comments. If you guys enjoyed this video, then feel free to leave a like and a sub. It only takes a few seconds and you can change your mind at any point. As of speaking right now, I'm already working on some tracks that I'll release in 2024, and I'm very excited to see how far I can get this year. And yeah, hope you guys are having a very much wonderful day, and I will see you guys in the next video, and as always, enjoy Wario on drugs.